Tonight, federal agents raid a city mayor's office in a massive drug and corruption investigation.
3:47 a.m., downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota. The city is frozen under a blanket of January darkness. Snow drifts pile against government buildings like frozen waves. Streets are empty. Windows are dark. The temperature sits at -8 degrees. Inside 48,000 homes across the Twin Cities, families sleep beneath heavy blankets, unaware that their city has been operating as something else entirely for the past 2 years. But inside a fortified federal command center 3 miles from City Hall, nobody is sleeping. A massive digital screen displays a web of connections so dense it looks like a spider's nest stretched across the entire Midwest. Red lines pulse between addresses, warehouses, and government buildings. Financial transfers flow like blood through arteries. Bank records scroll past in endless streams. And at the center of it all, one name was brighter than the rest, pulsing like a heartbeat. Mayor Farhan Osman Abdi. For 16 months, FBI and DEA investigators have been tracking what they initially believed was isolated criminal activity within Minneapolis' Somali community. Drug arrests were climbing steadily. Overdose deaths were spiking in emergency rooms across the metro area. Welfare fraud reports were multiplying. But when analysts finally connected the dots using advanced data mapping software, they realized they weren't looking at random crimes committed by disconnected individuals. They were looking at infrastructure, a system, a machine built to move narcotics, launder money, and exploit federal assistance programs on an industrial scale. The numbers were staggering and grew worse with every layer investigators peeked back. Between January 2024 and March 2026, overdose deaths linked to fentanyl pills in the Minneapolis metropolitan area surged by 441%. Armed robbery incidents tied to cartel enforcement jumped 318%. Human trafficking cases doubled, then tripled, overwhelming local social services. And financial investigators confirmed that at least $1.9 billion in federal assistance funds, money meant for refugees, children, and struggling families, had been systematically diverted through a network of nonprofit organizations, cultural centers, and community development foundations. But that was just the surface, the visible damage. Treasury analysts now believe the true figure exceeded $3.4 billion, making it one of the largest domestic embezzlement schemes in American history. Funds had been siphoned through fake daycare centers, ghost employee programs, fraudulent housing assistance claims, and disability fraud on a scale federal auditors had never encountered. And the architect wasn't hiding in the shadows, operating from some distant safe house. He was running the city. Mayor Farhan Osman Abdi, 51 years old, elected in 2022 with a historic 71% approval rating. A charismatic leader who promised safety, integration, and economic opportunity for all residents. His face appeared on magazine covers. National media praised his progressive policies and his ability to bridge cultural divides. He stood beside police chiefs and federal officials at press conferences, pledging zero tolerance for crime and promising a safer Minneapolis. But if the intelligence was accurate, and analysts were now 98% certain it was, he wasn't fighting crime. He was commanding it. At 3:51 a.m., the lead FBI supervisor, a 23-year veteran named Special Agent Marcus Chen, lifted his radio. His hand was steady. His voice was calm. All units, authorization confirmed. Execute Operation Ironclad. Go now. The raids began in silence. 4:32 a.m., Cedar Riverside neighborhood, Minneapolis. 8 black Chevy Suburbans rolled to a stop outside a 4-story apartment complex known locally as the Blue Tower. The building was dark, except for a single light on the 3rd floor. No lights, no sirens, just the crunch of boots on ice and the low hum of idling engines. FBI, DEA, ICE, and Homeland Security agents moved like shadows across the frozen parking lot. 62 operators in tactical black gear. Faces covered by balaclavas, rifles raised and ready. They stacked at 3 separate entry points. Flashbangs were prepped. Breaching charges set. Thermal imaging confirmed 17 heat signatures inside the building. At exactly 4:33 a.m., the doors exploded inward with a deafening crack. FBI, get on the ground. Hands where we can see them. The first suspect, a 29-year-old enforcer named Abdirahman Hassan, bolted from a 3rd-floor hallway clutching a black duffel bag. He made it 4 steps before he was tackled by 2 ICE agents who brought him down hard on the tile floor. Inside the bag, $340,000 in cash, bundled with rubber bands and 200 fentanyl pills stamped with the letter M, the signature marking of Sinaloa cartel product. On the 2nd floor, agents found what they weren't expecting. Behind a false wall in apartment 2C, Concealed by a bookshelf that swung open on hidden hinges, they discovered a processing room, industrial scales, vacuum sealers, 3 pill presses capable of producing 10,000 pills per hour, and stacked along the far wall in heat-sealed packages, 87 kilograms of pure fentanyl powder, enough to produce over 9.7 million lethal doses and flood every city from Minneapolis to Chicago. But it was the laptop on the table that changed everything. The screen was still open, glowing softly in the darkroom. Encrypted chat logs scrolled in green text. Shipping manifests listed routes through Iowa, Wisconsin, and the Dakotas. Delivery schedules were marked in military time. Payment confirmations showed wire transfers to accounts in Somalia and Dubai. And buried in the metadata, digital signatures tied directly to the mayor's office administrative server. Within minutes, the scene commander made the call to FBI headquarters. "This isn't a drug house. This is a command hub. We need forensic teams here immediately." Across the city, 17 more locations were hit simultaneously in a coordinated blitz designed to prevent any communication between sites. In South Minneapolis, DEA units breached a warehouse registered as a halal food distribution center called Barakah Foods Inc. Inside, they found no food, no freezers, no inventory. They found 512 pounds of methamphetamine packaged in 1-pound bags, 221 firearms, including AR-15 rifles and Glock pistols with filed-off serial number, and 6 industrial money counters running nonstop, still warm from hours of operation. Cash was stacked floor to ceiling in black plastic bins. Agents later confirmed the total seizure at $18.7 million. Near the University of Minnesota campus, ICE agents raided a logistics company called Sahara Express Delivery. The owner, a 44-year-old man named Mohammed Yusuf, attempted to flee through a rear loading dock. He was detained within 90 seconds, tackled in the snow before he could reach his vehicle. Inside his office, agents recovered hard drives containing routing data for over 1,400 drug shipments, disguised as furniture and textiles, complete with falsified customs documents and shipping manifests. At a suburban home in Edina, SWAT teams encountered armed resistance. 2 cartel enforcers opened fire from an upstairs bedroom window, bullets shattering glass and striking an armored vehicle. After a tense 9-minute standoff that woke the entire neighborhood, both suspects were neutralized. One surrendered. The other was taken down by sniper fire. Inside the house, agents found a drug super lab capable of producing 50,000 fentanyl pills per day, complete with industrial ventilation systems to prevent detection. By 5:47 a.m., the scale of the operation was undeniable. Federal agents had seized 9,700 pounds of narcotics, including fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine. They had confiscated $44.2 million in cash. They had arrested 118 suspects, and they had recovered enough digital evidence, including laptops, phones, hard drives, and encrypted communication devices, to map an empire that stretched across 8 states. But the most damning discovery was still being analyzed. 7:15 a.m., FBI Cyber Forensics Lab, St. Paul, Minnesota. Inside a secure facility 5 miles from downtown, analysts cracked the encryption on the laptop recovered from the Blue Tower. 3 technicians had been working for over an hour, running decryption protocols through supercomputers. What they found made them go silent. The screen filled with a network diagram labeled Project Northern Route. It showed a sophisticated web of shell companies, offshore accounts, ghost corporations, and sham nonprofits. Over 340 entities, all interconnected like a massive corporate family tree. Money flowed through fake charities with names like Hope Foundation Minnesota, Somali Youth Development Trust, New Horizon Community Services, and Bridge to Success Initiative. None of them did community work. They laundered drug money. Each entity was registered using forged documents and stolen identities. Bank accounts were opened with fabricated social security numbers. Funds moved in carefully timed increments of $9,800 to avoid the $10,000 federal reporting threshold. Over $440 million had been processed through this network in just 22 months, moving from street-level sales to offshore havens in the Cayman Islands, Dubai, and Nairobi. But it was the approval signatures that stunned investigators. Every major transaction required authorization from a central administrator. The digital key belonged to one person, Mayor Farhan Osman Abdi. His encrypted username, FOAdminSecure, appeared 1,029 times in the transaction log. He had personally signed off on drug shipments, approved convoy schedules, authorized payments to corrupt officials, and ordered enforcement actions against rivals. His office wasn't just connected to the cartel, it was the command center. The lead analyst, a former NSA cryptographer, leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen in disbelief. "This isn't corruption," he said quietly. "This is command-level collusion. This is a mayor running a cartel like a CEO runs a corporation." the investigation revealed something even darker. Mayor Abdi hadn't partnered with just any criminal organization. He had aligned himself with the Sinaloa cartel, one of the most ruthless and sophisticated drug empires in the world. The arrangement was coldly efficient and brutally profitable. The cartel provided product, protection, and logistics expertise. The mayor provided access, immunity, and infrastructure within American borders. Together, they had transformed Minneapolis into a secure distribution hub for the entire upper Midwest, moving drugs to Chicago, Detroit, Milwaukee, and dozens of smaller cities. Financial records showed the mayor received $2.7 million in direct payments over 2 years, routed through a consulting firm registered in his cousin's name and disguised as fees for advisory services. In exchange, he used his executive authority to disable oversight mechanisms, reassign investigators who got too close, and delay audits that would have exposed the scheme. But his most dangerous move was internal. Between 2024 and 2026, Mayor Abdi quietly embedded 47 individuals with direct cartel ties into city departments. They were hired as clerks, IT specialists, logistics coordinators, and community liaison. On paper, their resumes looked legitimate. Background checks came back clean because the records had been falsified. In reality, they were intelligence operatives working for the cartel. They monitored police radio traffic in real time. They leaked raid schedules hours before operations launched. They falsified inspection reports for businesses under investigation. They ensured that certain neighborhoods were never patrolled between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., the exact window when drug convoys moved through the city under cover of darkness. Surveillance footage recovered from traffic cameras later confirmed during those hours, over 240 vehicles with no license plates or covered plates entered and exited Minneapolis every single night. Traffic cameras were disabled remotely. Patrol grids were adjusted through fraudulent work orders. The system had been reprogrammed from the inside. This was not negligence. This was not incompetence. This was engineered treason. 9:33 a.m. U.S. Department of Justice, Washington, D.C. The U.S. Attorney General convened an emergency briefing in a secure conference room. Cabinet officials, FBI directors, and DEA administrators filled the room. Screens displayed real-time updates from Minneapolis. The directive was clear: expand the operation immediately. Within 2 hours, federal officials authorized the largest coordinated enforcement action in Minnesota history. Over 150 agents were mobilized from 7 federal agencies: FBI, DEA, ICE, ATF, DHS, U.S. Marshals. SWAT units from 6 states were deployed. Black Hawk helicopters lifted off from Joint Base Fort Snelling, rotors slicing through freezing morning air. Armored convoys rolled out from staging points near Interstate 94 and Interstate 35, creating a perimeter around the Twin Cities. At 11:47 a.m., a command room display showed 63 red markers pulsing across the Twin Cities metro area and extending into Wisconsin, Iowa, and South Dakota. Each one represented a location tied to Mayor Abdi's network: warehouses, stash houses, money laundering fronts, human trafficking hub. The order came through over encrypted radio channels. Hit them all, simultaneously, leave nothing standing. What followed was a surgical dismantling of an empire. In Bloomington, agents raided a shipping facility operated by a company called Global Freight Solutions. Inside, they found 1,240 pounds of cocaine hidden inside wooden pallets labeled as medical supplies bound for clinics in North Dakota. The facility manager was arrested while attempting to delete server logs showing 2 years of shipments. In St. Cloud, DEA teams stormed a rural compound disguised as a trucking depot. They discovered a hidden tunnel system beneath the main warehouse, reinforced with concrete and ventilation, used to store narcotics between shipments. Agents seized 890 pounds of heroin and 14 assault rifles. The tunnel extended 40 feet underground. In Mankato, ICE units targeted a massage parlor that doubled as a human trafficking hub. 12 women, all undocumented migrants from Somalia and Ethiopia, were rescued. The owner, a known Sinaloa cartel associate named Hassan Ali, was detained without incident. Records showed he had been operating the front for 3 years. In Rochester, federal agents intercepted a convoy of 3 black SUVs traveling south on Highway 52 toward the Iowa border. Inside, they found $9.3 million in cash packed in cardboard boxes, 340 kilograms of methamphetamine, and encrypted radios programmed to law enforcement frequencies. In Duluth, a cartel stash house was raided at dawn. Agents found 670 pounds of fentanyl powder and a printing operation producing fake IDs for cartel members entering the country. Back in Minneapolis, the final blow was delivered. 12:34 p.m., Minneapolis City Hall. FBI agents entered the building through the main entrance. No battering ram, no flashbang, just badges and arrest warrants. Mayor Farhan Osman Abdi was sitting in his office on the 4th floor, surrounded by aides and 3 lawyers. He did not resist, he did not shout, he did not demand explanations. As agents placed him in handcuffs, his expression remained calm, almost detached, as if he had been expecting this moment. But the evidence in his office told a different story. Agents recovered 3 encrypted phones, a personal server hidden inside a locked cabinet, and a safe containing $1.2 million in cash bundled in vacuum-sealed bags. Inside his desk drawer, they found a handwritten ledger listing payments to 29 public officials, including 2 state legislators, 4 district court judges, and a deputy police chief. The arrest was broadcast live on every news channel. By 1-ish p.m., the world knew. The operation didn't stop at the mayor's office. Over the next 48 hours, federal investigators executed a brutal internal purge. They had uncovered a network of corruption so deep it extended into law enforcement itself, compromising the very institutions meant to protect the public. 17 Minneapolis police officers were arrested for accepting bribes from the cartel. They had been paid between $15,000 and $80,000 each to ignore specific addresses, delay search warrants, and provide advance warning of federal operations. Some had been on the payroll for over a year. 4 ICE agents were suspended pending investigation for falsifying migrant processing records, allowing cartel operatives to enter the country using fraudulent asylum claims and fabricated persecution stories. A federal judge in Hennepin County was detained after investigators discovered he had dismissed 22 drug-related cases tied to the mayor's network. His bank records showed deposits totaling $340,000 from an offshore account controlled by a shell company in Panama. The betrayal was systemic, institutional. One veteran DEA agent, 19 years on the job, broke down during an internal briefing. "We trusted these people," he said, voice shaking. "We worked alongside them. We shared intelligence, and they were feeding our cases to the enemy." This was not isolated corruption. This was a parallel enforcement system, controlled by the cartel and commanded by the mayor. The financial investigation revealed the true scale of the operation. By the end of the 3rd day, Treasury enforcement teams had frozen $440 million in assets across 14 countries. Shell companies collapsed overnight. Offshore accounts were seized, sham nonprofits were shut down, wire transfers were blocked. The financial network that sustained the cartel didn't slow down. It stopped. Auditors confirmed that over $1.9 billion in federal assistance funds had been diverted through fraudulent applications, ghost recipients, and fake service claims. The money had been routed through the mayor's network and transferred overseas, primarily to accounts in Somalia, Kenya, and the United Arab Emirates, where it funded everything from luxury real estate to additional drug shipments. Federal officials estimated that if the operation had continued for another year, the total damage could have exceeded $7 billion, making it the largest embezzlement case in U.S. history. But the human cost was even more devastating. Health agencies linked to the fentanyl pills seized in Minneapolis to over 2,400 overdose deaths across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and the Dakotas between 2024 and 2026. Families had buried sons, daughters, brothers, and sisters. Entire neighborhoods had been hollowed out by addiction. Emergency rooms were overwhelmed. Morgues ran out of space. This was not just financial crime. This was mass murder disguised as commerce. On the 5th day, federal prosecutors filed a 347-page indictment. Mayor Farhan Osman Abdi was charged with racketeering, drug trafficking conspiracy, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, human trafficking, wire fraud, and treason-level collusion with a foreign criminal organization. If convicted on all counts, he faced life in prison without the possibility of parole. But the investigation was far from over. Analysts had begun tracing the network beyond Minneapolis. The same funding structures, the same nonprofit shells, the same cartel logistics patterns appeared in 11 other cities across the United States: Detroit, Columbus, Nashville, Portland, Seattle, San Diego, Phoenix. Minneapolis was not the origin, it was the proof of concept. The Sinaloa cartel had been testing a new strategy. Instead of fighting law enforcement, infiltrate it. Instead of avoiding government, control it. And instead of operating in the shadows, operate in plain sight using the language of community development, refugee assistance, and social justice. It had almost worked. One retired FBI section chief, now serving as a consultant on the case, summarized the threat in a closed-door briefing to congressional leaders. "This is the most sophisticated domestic infiltration operation we have encountered in 30 years. They didn't need to defeat the system. They just needed to understand it better than we did, and they almost won." By the end of the 2nd week, the results were final. Operation Ironclad had resulted in the arrest of 312 suspects across 8 states. federal agents had seized over 10 tons of narcotics, including fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine. They had confiscated $62.8 million in cash, 190 firearms, and enough encrypted communication devices to supply a small army. 17 public officials had been arrested, 46 were under investigation, and the mayor of Minnesota's largest city was awaiting trial in a maximum security federal detention facility. The streets of Minneapolis were quiet again, but the silence felt different now. It was not the silence of safety. It was the silence of reckoning. Because what happened in Minneapolis was not an anomaly. It was a warning. Power does not always need violence. Sometimes it only needs patience, ambition, and the ability to recognize when no one is watching. The system was not broken by force. It was reprogrammed from within. And the most dangerous part? It almost went unnoticed. Democracy does not fail with explosions. It fails with signatures, with approvals, with small compromises that accumulate over years until the structure no longer belongs to the people it was built to serve. The badge will be rebuilt. The system will be audited. But the responsibility for vigilance does not belong to agents alone. It belongs to every citizen who chooses not to look away. If you believe corrupt officials who betray their communities deserve the maximum penalty under the law, comment justice below. If you want to see more of these networks exposed and dismantled, hit the like button and subscribe so this story reaches more people. And if you are still watching, share this video, because the fight against infiltration does not end with one raid. It continues with awareness.